days away. Russia will keep trying to divide our country, and worse than that, we may even have other foreign interests trying to divide our country. They've tried it once, and they will do it again. That's why we've introduced this bill. Americans deserve to know who's paying for the online ads. And honestly, even if the Russian interference had not occurred, we should still be updating our laws. Our laws should be as sophisticated as those who are trying to manipulate us or to break the law, and we need to update them. Listen to these numbers. $1.4 billion was spent on online advertising in the 2016 election. And while TV ads or radio ads had to be filed and registered so people could look at them, citizens could look at them, reporters could figure out how much was bought, how much was spent. That is not true for online advertisements. You literally could run the same ad on TV and it would be in a public registry, but not if you ran it online. Only two companies, Google and Facebook, accounted for 99% of the revenue growth from digital advertising in 2016. A Pew poll has found that 65% of Americans use the internet for election-related information in the last election, 65% of Americans. And online platforms are now dwarfing broadcast, satellite, and cable providers. The largest internet platform has over 210 million American users compared to the largest cable provider, which has 22 million subscribers. We need regulatory rules, a framework that shields our elections from foreign money and harmonizes the rules governing broadcasters, radio, print on one hand, and online on the other. If a candidate or a cause buys an ad on TV, the same rules should apply if they buy it on Facebook or Google or on Twitter. Our bill, the Honest Ads Act, would bring transparency and accountability to paid political advertising by simply extending the current disclosure laws to those when they're run online. It is fair and it's the right thing to do. So what does it do? One, updates our laws to ensure that political ads sold online are covered by the same rules. Two, requires online platforms with millions of users to maintain a public file so people know what is in these ads. These are both ads for and against candidates and ads of national legislative importance. By the way, that is the same standard used for TV and radio. And it would require online platforms to do a better job of policing their sites to ensure that the laws which prevent foreign nationals from influencing our elections are not being violated. And to the internet providers, we are not here talking about people putting up cat videos or passing on SNL skits or putting up cats or putting up cats talking about Donald Trump. This is not what this is about. It is paid political advertising. The integrity of our election system is the cornerstone of our democracy. The freedom to choose our leaders and know with full confidence that they were chosen in a free and fair election is the cornerstone of our democracy. It's what our founding fathers envisioned. This isn't about one election or one party. This is about our democracy. So I want to thank Senator Warner for his leadership and his work on this issue. He was early on talking about this issue and working on it through the Intelligence Committee on a bipartisan basis, and also Senator McCain for his sponsorship. I now turn it over to Senator Warner.
Well, thank you, Amy. Thank you for your leadership on this issue. We started talking about this a couple months ago, and in Senator Klobuchar's role as the ranking member on the Rules Committee, said, let's see if we could work together on this. I come to this as a fan of America's leading role in innovation and technology. I quickly counted up, and I still have been a technology entrepreneur longer than I've been an elected official. And the companies we're talking about here are really iconic American companies. They are some of the greatest stories of 21st century success in both America, and for that matter, they all have a worldwide footprint. But these companies in many ways rely upon the trust of all of us who use these platforms. So even those of us who've been champions, though, of digital technology and of social media and these platform companies, I think, though, in light of what we've seen over the last 9 or 10 months, we need to take a step back. Because with every news story about Russian bots or bogus information or shadowy ads that you don't know the source of, we need to acknowledge the fact that the nature of politics and campaigning is changing. Amy made a comment about the $1.4 billion. And that was I think a 750% increase over 2012. And I imagine we'll see that same kind of increase between 2016 and 2020. More and more, we turn to these online platforms to receive our news. And the truth is, we need to look, as Amy has already indicated, about the responsibility these companies have and try to mirror some of the responsibilities they have with some of the traditional media companies. What is clear is that foreign agents used American social media to spread misinformation, to sow chaos, and in many ways ads, and then on top of that some of the false accounts to sow discord. It's also clear that they used what was relatively cheap, and while we made note of the fact that, for example, in the Facebook area, it's $100,000 to $150,000, I still believe that still may be just the tip of the iceberg. Again, remember, these were the ads that were paid for in rubles, and we've not been able to sort through whether, some of these same accounts may have been smart enough to actually use dollars, euros, or pounds to pay for ads. So there may be more. And these ads were used to promote rumors. They were to spread misinformation. They were to stir up political controversy. And they were basically used to divide us. Not all of them were advocates for or against the candidate, but clearly as these ads become public, they were to sow division. And it didn't end with the election. As recently as yesterday, there have been press reports that there was an account representing itself as the Tennessee Republican Party that was in reality a Russian account. Now, I know my friends, our Tennessee Republican senators and others, would want to know whether that account was actually representative of Tennessee Republicans or whether it was the use of foreign entities. And our legislation will take a step in that direction. The goal of that and other efforts was to undermine faith in our facts, faith in each other, and faith in our democratic process. That undermines the basic tenets of our democracy. As recently as today, I just happened to catch this, so this is breaking news, President Bush gave a very powerful speech. But President Bush 43, said, quote, "We've experienced a sustained attempt by a hostile power to feed and exploit our country's divisions using stealthy media platforms." So President Bush himself acknowledges this is a challenge that we need to take on. What this legislation does, and again, just echoing what Senator Klobuchar said, it's pretty simple. It requires political advertisements in the digital space to have the same kind of disclosure requirements that already exist in print, broadcast, radio, and other traditional media communications forms. And it is common sense legislation. We're proud to have Senator McCain's support. I believe we'll have a number of other Republican senators support us. A number of members of the Intelligence Committee wanted to simply wait for the platform companies who are coming in on November 1st and hear their comments. But we already have broad-based support from folks in the election field. Former Republican FEC Chairman Trevor Potter supports this legislation. Current Democratic FEC Commissioner Ellen Weintraub supports it. Amy's been a candidate. I've been a candidate 4 times statewide in Virginia. I think as a candidate or as somebody who is running against me, ought to be able to have the ability to go and at least look at the content of the ads that are being run for or against any individual campaign. Right now what we have are ads that are actually in many ways set to disappear after they've targeted a very select demographic group. That is not the kind of transparency that we need. As I mentioned, as Senator Klobuchar mentioned, the Honest Ad Act simply extends the transparency and disclosure components that already exist for most of your media outlets themselves. Final comment is, it's our hope that the social media companies, the platform companies, will work with us. Facebook recently said, leadership of Facebook recently said, quote, they'll do everything it can to keep our communities safe from interference. If they believe those statements, work with us to get this common sense, light touch regulation in place so that Americans, as we go, not just into the 385 days in Minnesota, but we've got elections in about 3 weeks in Virginia, folks ought to be able to know the ads they're seeing and the information, whether they are American-based or foreign-based, and they ought to be able to know the source of those ads and have a place to go and look at the content. With that, we'll be happy to take questions.
Yep. Thank you. Yep.
You mentioned elections are right around the corner, and there's this great concern that Russia or other foreign actors will interfere again. Are we any closer today to solving this problem and addressing this threat than we were Election Day last year?
I think we are closer in the sense, let's take the subject right now, that the social media companies, which were frankly late to the game in acknowledging this problem, and their first pass in terms of coming forward was not nearly as extensive as I hope what the product they'll have for when they testify November 1st. But I think they're moving in the right direction. We've also seen, I think, a growing awareness. Remember, 21 states' electoral systems, the Russians at least attempted to tamper. Make clear they didn't break into any voter files and change voting results, but they attempted to tamper. One of the great disappointments I've had is it took Department of Homeland Security about 9 months to notify those 21 states. There was good news this past weekend where a number of the Secretary of States met with DHS, and I think they came out with a better plan. I know in Virginia, and I think an abundance of caution, even before we were notified, we took down some of the voting machines that didn't have a paper trail. So I think we're further along, but I still don't think we have a whole of government approach, and not just vis-a-vis the Russians, but vis-a-vis any kind of foreign entity.
I think the changes from the election day is that we know this is going on. We, as Marcus said, we don't know the details, but we know some really bad things has happened. Literally every week we get new reports. My state's one of those 21 states. We have a good system in place, higher voter turnout than any state in the country, but I wish we had known it early. And on a separate note, Senator Graham and I have a bill to beef up states' election infrastructure. We tried to get it on the NDAA with Senator McCain's support. It was blocked. It is supported by the Freedom Caucus over in the House, simply because people don't want their state elections hacked, and they don't want to ruin the whole concept of state elections. So that is a separate issue than this, as you know, which is paid political ads. And as we've said, even without the Russian issue, you have now money migrating over there by the millions and hundreds of millions and up to 1.4 billion. And we need to change our laws so we have fairness for all citizens of this country, regardless of whether they see their ads on TV or on the internet.
Have you had any indication so far about whether or not there was anybody in the United States who was helping, who was assisting this Russian ad effort in any way?
I know we've had these conversations back and forth a number of times. We have a number of people that we still want to talk to, but I'm not going to comment on the status of where we are in the investigation. But clearly there are individuals that we want to know the extent of some of the social media campaigns that campaigns used, and we haven't had those conversations yet.
Just as a quick follow-up, it's part of a larger question about Russian collusion. One member of your committee, a Republican member, said this week that you guys have reached a point of diminishing returns in investigating this issue of collusion. Have you reached that point of diminishing returns?
Listen, we want to keep this with the number of individuals that the members have yet to see in terms of some of the principles that you and your colleagues have reported on. The members of the committee have not even had a chance to talk to the vast majority of those individuals, and we could tick through those names. You know the names as well as I. So for anyone, I stand where Chairman Burr and I were here, a week or so ago, where he said we've not ruled anything in, we've not ruled anything out. We're going to let, again, the facts take us where the truth leads.
And remember, the Mueller investigation, I'm on the Judiciary Committee. We have our own investigations going on, but we also, one of our main goals is to allow that investigation to be completed. And out of that, we're going to learn more information.
Senator Warren, for those who might, you just said we still don't have a whole of government approach. For surprised? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think, again, this is not entirely a critique of the Trump administration. I don't believe under the Obama administration we had a whole of government approach about dealing with foreign powers' active measures that can be used to interfere in our election cycle. I mean, luckily, many members of the Trump administration acknowledge this problem. The DHS acknowledges this problem. The intel community acknowledges this problem. I don't think we are helped in terms of making Americans fully aware when the president continues to dismiss the evidence of Russian intervention, which pretty much everyone else has absolutely reached the conclusion on, whether it's election hacking or whether it's the use of these social media platforms. And because we're talking about kind of issues de novo here. I will grant that one of the difference between, for example, how Facebook reacted in the immediate aftermath of our elections, where they were dismissive when I raised these concerns, and what happened when, by the time of the French elections, where Facebook took down 50,000 accounts, showed that this became much higher on their radar screen. This is a brand new area of conflict and a brand new area of vulnerability.
And I'll note that Senator Sessions at our Judiciary Committee hearing yesterday, I don't know if you saw that Q&A that I did, but he acknowledged that he wanted to work with us on this bill. So he didn't shut it down and said he was open to working with us and that it was a serious issue. Right here?
Thank you. How will you grapple with potential objections from the Republican side on this bill? And besides Senator McCain, can you say there are other members who've expressed support for it, and same with the House?
Well, there are a number of members that have talked to us about this bill and are interested in it, and we are working with them right now as we speak and answering their questions. And so far, we haven't seen major issues. I think when people first hear about this, they want to make sure you're not making any changes to people's abilities to put up their free stuff and their kids' birthday pictures, and obviously we're not. We're talking here about paid political advertisement. So we go through the numbers. We go through what the threats are to our democracy and to our national security. And we've been able to convince a lot of people that this is the right thing to do. Now, the online companies, as Mark said, we're working with them. I'm not going to tell you they support this bill right now, but they have to realize that as the world has changed and they have been selling ads to people and making money off of this political system, that they have an obligation, just like TV and radio has, to disclose this to the public.
I'd just like to add, too, what elected official wouldn't want to at least see the content that was being run against him, he or she? And who wouldn't want to know if the ad that's appearing next to your story was actually paid for by a foreign power? I don't know what opposition there would be to that kind of disclosure.
Or you have a video that looks like, whoa, it went viral. Wouldn't you like to know if someone spent $1 million to make it go viral?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I follow on that? Leader McConnell is a longtime opponent of tighter campaign finance restrictions. I talked to Mr. Shelby today, and he seemed pretty non-committal. Is there a real legislative path for this bill, do you believe?
I think this is again echoing what Senator McCain said and others. We believe this is a national security issue. I mean, the Russians, through direct attempting to interfere in our electoral system and through using false information and paid advertising, tried to interfere in our electoral process. I believe that's an issue of national security.
Can you speak a little bit to how much money one has to spend on an ad for it to go into the database, and how you get that number?
Sure. Well, we came up with the number of $500, which is cumulative. So if you buy, $2 ads and you buy 250 of them, you're at your $500 mark, and then you actually have to disclose the ads that you had already bought. We think that was a fair number. It's in the realm of where other numbers are for this kind of disclosure requirement. And as you know, there's really two parts. One is disclaimer, and that We're just putting in place what the rules are for TV, print, and radio. If it's audio on the internet, then it's the radio standard. We do allow for the FEC to go back in and look at the nuances of this if they want to do something differently down the line with the rulemaking. But putting it in the public file, that would happen right away. And that is for any internet provider that has 50 million users a year. We calculate a month. Well, it's over the year, but it's the average of a month. So if they're at like 50 million a month for so many months, then they meet that threshold. And it's, of course, all of our major online platforms, and Facebook and Google are 85% of the political advertising estimated anyway. So those are the numbers that we have put in the bill. There were some reports earlier that it was set at $10,000, I think. That was out there, and that is not correct. It's $500. And, of course, we worked with a number of the consumer citizens groups, public interest groups, to figure out what would actually work. And as Mark mentioned, we have a lot of the endorsements of these groups.
Senator Klobuchar, what restrictions are there on foreign currency outside the U.S. dollar funding these political ads? And what penalties will there be for companies that are found to not be?
He'll start and I'll go.
Yeah.
He's doing his intelligence.
There are, no restrictions on currency. If I wanted to, as an American, buy political ads and pay in euros, you can do that.
Should there be?
I don't believe so. If you pay in rubles, that shouldn't be a restrictions. What we do put in place is a reasonable expectation that, because the question goes, how do you sort out the identity of whoever's placing this ad? We put the term reasonable expectation on the social media company to identify whether that source and that is foreign or not. There is already a prohibition against any foreigner trying to spend dollars to influence an American election. We felt the reasonable expectation was the appropriate standard. So it would seem to me, and obviously this is kind of the first cut that Facebook took as well, if you've got a lot of Russian URLs that are paying in rubles, that would probably lead you to a reasonable expectation that they ought to get a closer look to determine that are they Americans or are they Russians. And Facebook itself determined in this case that they were Russians. We'd expect that standard to continue.
The penalties are like FEC penalties. You would see fines. There's been fines. They have broad jurisdiction. And, of course, it involves liability potentially for the online platforms if they don't follow these rules, and then candidates as well. So you have to follow the rules. And it's really putting this on par with where broadcast and radio are today. Right there.
Facebook hasn't released the ads from the last election. Have you reviewed the ads, and do you think that they should have raised this question about whether it was reasonable to think that they were...
I'm not going to retrospectively look back. I've reviewed a number of the ads. It's my hope that the Facebook will release all these ads. HPSI, I believe, has indicated that they are going to release the ads. The majority of the ads that I've reviewed would at least fall into the category where they would be in the where they could be they would be retained for an individual to view the content. We wouldn't, we're never. This is not. Let me make it clear. This is not. There will always be a case where there could be things that could fall through the cracks. What we're trying to do here is start with this light touch, in a way, because we're in a new space. We're in a new area. We don't want to slow down innovation in the internet. We don't want to slow down innovation in technology. But I think Americans deserve to know if the ads they're seeing, whether they're generated by Americans or generated by foreign interests.
Senator Warner, do you see yourself introducing any other pieces of legislation touching on the Russia probe? Is this your top priority now, or do you think...
I think this is, what I think Senator Klobuchar and I were trying to look at is, where could we start? And I think this is a light touch approach. I mean, what this doesn't address at all, because it really gets a lot harder, which is an account that says an account that somehow represents itself as Amy Klobuchar, but it's actually Boris Godunov from St. Petersburg. You know,
And he's not going to say, I'm a Russian agent and I approve this
so
ad. No,
that
I don't think so.
identity, that identity piece is a much tougher place, and I hope, again, that the platform companies would come up with some ideas. They've indicated they're going to try to do more of that policing. Clearly, if we're talking, and this is one of the reasons why I think there's more to come from Facebook, 457 in America and 50,000 accounts they took down in France. Now, Facebook will say they were taking down accounts last fall during the election, but if they were taking down accounts last fall during the election and they were of Russian content, why didn't we know it then?
That's why we put the third section that I outlined in there that says they have to take reasonable efforts to stop this foreign influence. And so that'll be, we deliberately put that in there to go at some of these other things that might not be obviously paid political ads. Okay, yeah.
The social media companies in the past have objected to similar sort of disclosures in Sonora. As you've said, they've been slow to respond. Why do you think you can get them on board with this bill?
Well, I think we're in a whole different area where they themselves, some of them are now coming out voluntarily and saying we need to do something about it. They've admitted there's a problem, always the first step. And I think the argument some of them would make was, oh, let's just do this voluntarily. And the problem is it has to cover everyone. You just can't have a few companies doing it voluntarily, at least the bigger platforms like we're starting with. And you also want to have it be in our laws. So it's very clear if there's a violation, they violate the laws, and it allows us to pursue it. And then the third reason is I just cannot justify, as a U.S. Senator, that you would apply one set of laws to one media outlet, to TV, radio, and print, and then not apply it to another.
And I'd also simply add, these companies rely on the trust of consumers who use them. And I think it's in their own self-interest to work with us in this, I think, again, keep coming back to light touch approach.
Can I follow on that just real quickly? Are you confident that they'll come along and support this in some form? Or
We're so charming. That might really get them right there.
Listen, I'm hopeful.
Well, Senator Warner, you were blistering a few weeks ago about Twitter, and they came in. They didn't seem to have their act together on this issue.
You mean the fact that they only did an analysis of the accounts that had already been exposed by Facebook?
Yeah, Tennessee
That fact.
big Tennessee GOP account that had over 100,000 followers. Other people say they reported it a number of times. Do you think that since you took them to task, they have turned over a new leaf? And you also have Google out there. Can you sort of speak
I just say,
those three
I
companies
think
and
that
how they're responding?
I think that they got the message, but I think the real proof in the pudding will be come to the hearing on November 1st. That's going to be very important because this is going to be a public hearing where these companies are going to have to testify before members of the United States Senate and answer some of these questions. And I think Americans are going to expect truthful, fulsome answers.
Okay.
Pardon me?
Are you disappointed that Mr. Zuckerberg won't be testifying?
I want to make sure that we have the people with the most ability to give the fullest answers. And I think it's my hope and expectation we'll still have that.
Senator Warren, can you deal with the issue just of Sheryl Sandberg just recently and the company said a number of times that they are not, this is not a media company. They don't want to be classified like that. They're run by technical workers, engineers. Can you just address the importance of that issue and why that
I'm not, as a long-term tech guy, I'm not going to get into Section 230 but I think, as Senator Klobuchar has indicated, when you have within the digital realm 85% of political advertising going through the Facebook or Google platform, and those political
The online political.
the online, I'm sorry, yes, right, the online advertising, and those numbers are going to only go up exponentially. these are political ads trying to influence people the same way the ads appear on television and radio. The notion that people shouldn't be able to look at that content, we can get into that. We can have that debate without having a debate of their status.
And just the numbers and the change that we've seen even since we last updated our own campaign laws. So if you go back about 10 years to 2006, we found that something like 18% of Americans were getting news on the internet in some way. Now we're up to 65% of Americans have said they're getting political news on the internet. That's a major change, and so they have to change with that. They have been wildly successful. They have brilliant people working for them. I believe there's a way that they can figure out how to fix this. And then your question pointedly on this fact that they're claiming they're not a media company. Well, I don't really care what they called. What I care about is that they're selling ads. They have huge departments of people selling ads to people. They're making money off of it, and just like TV does, just like radio does, and those same rules should apply.
Senator, just one question about when do you think these ads will be on the books? Will they be passed before the next midterm?
That's the goal.
No.
It's, what is it, 383 days away.
Senator Klobuchar is a brilliant senator, and I'm going to allow her to do the political prognostication.
Oh, that's so nice. You can just kind of sit back and answer these foreign power questions.
Soon.
The idea would be to make this really work and to get them in there, we'd have to pass it, because you don't want to just have it be the last week, right? So we'd have to get it done sometime early next year. Or attach it to some bill that's going through, including some kind of national security bill, would be a good argument for it.
And you know, the primary season starts in the spring in 2018.
And I wonder who's carrying the national security bills. Oh, Senator McCain. But anyway, just trying to get it in some kind of bill that's moving, I think would be important. We just, if we just sit here and put our heads in the sand, when we had the, Director Clapper saying we're just emboldening them by doing that. Okay, maybe one more?
Last question.
Okay.
I'm wondering, Facebook executive Andrew Bosworth described this morning this effort of them talking to you, telling you what might work on the platform as a, quote, collaboration. I'm wondering if you would agree with that characterization, and if you've made any changes to the text of this bill based on what you heard from them about the technical capabilities of their platform to do that.
I'll let Mark answer that. I can just tell you from initial drafts, the bill has only gotten stronger and tougher in terms of the thresholds that were out there, and after meeting with people, we came to that decision.
And we want to work with the platform companies, but we want to make sure that Americans can look at the content, that there's reasonable expectation that we're identifying foreign-based content, and that there's appropriate disclosure. And I think, again, want to thank Senator Klobuchar for a great leadership on this, and look forward to getting it done.
Okay, Mr. Vice Chair, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thanks, man.